Hey, you found us. Welcome home to Center for Spiritual Living. We understand that you can't sit here in these chairs and be with us for everything that we do in the world, but we still want you to be part of our community. I want you to know that you're making a difference. With every challenge you meet, with every thought that you change, you contribute to the value of life on this planet. You're part of this higher vision. Click the Contribute button today and continue being the difference. And remember, what you give here, what you give to others, returns right back to your life, multiplied abundantly.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So thank you for that song. Monique knows that that's kind of my mantra. I would just encourage you to use that as often as you remember it every day. I do that almost every day. Early in the morning, say, what would I do today if I were brave? And it makes a huge, huge difference. So I don't know if you can hear the ringing up out there or not, but it's really ringing up here. So maybe it's just me. Maybe I've been yelling too much at the ball games. I still have this ringing in my ears. And the dogs, we have two 75-pound labs that look and sound very ominous. Evidently, they don't like yelling and screaming. So they've been living upstairs through most of this year. Oh, yeah. So, Monique, if you could kind of scoot down a little bit. I can't see anybody in the second, third, or fourth row. That's good. Oh, that's even better. So this month we are in a new month, actually. Last month we studied all about Native American spirituality. This month the theme for November is the Zen Commandments, and it's from the book by the same title, the Zen Commandments, and the subtitle is 10 Suggestions for a Life of Inner Freedom. So it's probably pretty hard for anyone who was raised in Western Judeo-Christian cultures not to know what the 10 Commandments are. You know, all the 10 things that thou shalt not do. And maybe you learned those from your formal religious training. Maybe you learned them or found out about them from a movie where Moses cleverly disguised as Charlton Heston, or Charlton Heston cleverly disguised as Moses, stood on a mountain with, lightning all around him and the thunder roaring and a voice coming out of nowhere. And he's standing on the mountain with two paper mache tablets with scribbling on them, and we've all been told those were the 10 Commandments. So that image, probably was a powerful image for a lot of us, and probably or possibly caused us to think, wow, I need to take this serious if that's the way it happened. But I don't know about you, but I was raised with this saying, and maybe you were too, that, Mike, there are 10 commandments, not 10 suggestions. So just so you know, we are doing suggestions in November and not commandments. But those two words, commandments and suggestions, carry two very different meanings for most of us. Now, in spite of how we may joke about it or laugh about it, there really is nothing wrong inherently with the 10 Commandments that we were taught. They really are guidelines that most people would support and think are ways to live a life of integrity and character. I mean, when you think about it, most of us are really all in for not lying and stealing and cheating and killing. Basically, it's just treat people the way you want to be treated. But the thing about those commandments is they've been around for thousands and thousands of years. And even after thousands of years of being commanded, people still lie, steal, kill, cheat, covet, and all the rest of the thou shalt nots. We're still doing it. So maybe commanding people is not the best way to motivate humanity to live up to our highest potential. So issuing rules and commandments, what happens is really that's just dealing with outer behavior without addressing any inner awareness or what's going on the inside of us, which is really the place that our outer behavior comes from. And we hear it all the time in this teaching, so within, so without. So as unimaginable as it was for my son Ryan when he was a teenager to grasp the idea that I too was once a teenager, I remember, and you probably do too, remember this from your childhood and your teenage years, that there may have been short-term behavior changes based on commandments and rules and threats of punishment. The key term there is short-term behavior modification. But at some point in our development, every one of us had to start growing up and look inside of ourselves and start to live our ethics or our morals or whatever you want to call it. We had to start living those from the inside out and not based on what someone else told us was the rule or the expectation or else. That just didn't work for very long. We had to come up with all of this internally ourselves. The thing is, commandments are easy. Just do it. Don't ask questions. Don't think about it. Don't put them to the test and see how they work for you. A suggestion, on the other hand, invites us to experiment with an idea. So it's not always quite as easy as a commandment. But a suggestion lets us look at something from a different angle or from different angles, to check it out, to test it in what I like to call the laboratory of our own experience. So this month we'll be looking at different Zen suggestions like living openly, living in openness, kindness, living in the moment, living more simply, living a devoted life, and blessing everyone. So they're all suggestions on the path of our inner transformation of living from the inside out rather than just following rules and regulations that someone else tried to impose upon us. So the thing about all of these suggestions like kindness and devotion and simplicity is that they don't happen the same way or look the same for you as it might for the person sitting next to you. It's called being able to be a unique expression. But that's why I think suggestions are really more effective and work better than commandments. So today we're starting with the first Zen suggestion, which is to rest in openness. And there's a great parable that talks about how life could be viewed as the ocean. Life is the ocean. And our individual lives could be viewed as being a single solitary wave in that big ocean of life. Now we may look at that parable and say that each of our single solitary lives, or us as individual waves, is separate from everyone else. We're separate from all those other waves that are in the ocean, and maybe we would say we're even separate from the ocean itself. So looking at ourselves as a single solitary wave in this vast expanse and the vast depth of the big ocean of life leads us to look for ways to try to enlarge ourselves as much as we can. And what we do to enlarge ourselves is to look to the outer or to the external world for more stuff, more money or more income, We try to get more knowledge or more prestige and status or more recognition to make ourselves larger and to feel more important. Or one of the other things or strategies we try to do to enlarge ourselves is to control all the other waves or all the other lives around us to line up and be what we think they should be. But eventually, we finally figure out that that strategy doesn't really give us what we're really in search of finding for ourselves. Because what we find out is that these individual waves, like us, are only here for a limited amount of time. We are, they are, all of these waves that are the individual parts of life, they're all temporary. But under the surface of the turbulence that we create by trying to exert our own importance, what happens is with the ocean, it remains the same. Underneath the surface of all of the turbulence that all of these waves create, to try to prove itself and to control its surroundings, underneath all of that in the big ocean is perfect tranquility. So the parable ends by saying we need to become more like the ocean and less like individual waves in the ocean. And then when we answer the question, what separates me from this ocean, or what separates me from this bigger life than my own life, the answer is there is nothing that separates the wave from the ocean. Each wave is just a part of a limitless, never-ending ocean. The waves are just one of the ways that this ocean expresses itself. So our quest to overcome our perceived limitation as only one of the waves has been misdirected all along. We've been distracted by our constant compulsion to look somewhere else for something more. So the Zen philosophy that we're studying this month suggests that we don't have to look any farther than whatever presents itself in our lives at any given time. But our practice has been, through much of our life, to push and to pull, as the Zen people say. We try to push away anything that we find undesirable or pull toward us all the things that we think we want, or pull towards us all the things that we think should be. And what we find out at some point is that takes an incredible amount of energy and an incredible amount of effort to be doing all of that pushing and pulling against life and the way it's wanting to show up. So the first Zen suggestion is to rest in openness. And the other way they describe to rest in openness is to just simply witness the situation as it is. And one of the ways that we can do this witnessing the situation is by doing what the Lama Surya Das suggests when he says to elevate the scope of 360-degree global awareness. So we've all seen submarine movies, and so you'll remember when a submarine is underwater, and if they want to know what's going on above the surface, typically what they do is they raise this periscope. And the periscope comes up above the water's surface, and it makes a full 360-degree sweep of what's going on up above the surface to get a full view of what's happening. So what the Lama Surya Das was suggesting is to be receptive to all 360 degrees of our experience, to get the full range of the experience itself instead of being stuck in just this 5 or 10 degrees where we're pushing against something or trying to pull something back to us that we want. So the trap that we fall into that keeps us from this 360-degree awareness is our hardwiring as human beings to make meanings out of everything that happens. Someone says something or does something that we don't like, or we don't think they should have said or done, and we make a meaning out of it. We either make it mean something about them, or we make it mean something about us. Or life itself, or circumstances in our life, just don't happen according to our plan, or according to our expectations of what we thought should be. And then we make a meaning. We make that mean something. We make it mean something about God, or we make it mean something about our worthiness, or we make it mean something about our lovability, how much we're loved. And the reason that limits us to that 5 or 10 degree of pushing and pulling against the situation is when we're stuck in our meanings. And when that happens, we have tunnel vision. So I'm just going to ask you to do something, is to put your hands up to the side of your face like this and see just how much full range of view you have to what's going on around you. Your ability to see from this full 360 degree perspective is completely shut off. Creativity is blocked. And the ability to look at a situation and different eyes and through a new perspective is totally unavailable when this is all the farther we can see. So resting into openness gives us the opportunity to see that we can create any meaning we want to create out of any situation. And it's really an expression of the power to create that's within each and every one of us. If I can create one meaning about that, I can create another meaning if I choose. So this is a very simple example to show how this can work, but sometimes it's really the simple things that trip us up. So I want you to imagine with me for just a minute that a friend that you really enjoy seeing has invited you to dinner, and they say, I'll come and pick you up at 6 o'clock. Well, 6 o'clock comes and goes, and it becomes 6:15. 6:15 comes and goes and becomes 6:30, and there's no phone call, no text, no email explaining why your friend is late and not coming to pick you up. What meaning do you make out of that? Don't share out loud. Just have it up here. So what does it mean about the person who is late? Where would you typically go? What does it mean about their opinion of you that they would be 30 minutes late without explaining why? In other words, the question is, do you get stuck in this 5 to 10 degree tunnel vision point of view? Or can you practice resting in openness to the situation that's happening, as the Zen philosophy says, and to just witness it, so that you can view it from 360 degree point of view, where there are all where there are all kinds of possibilities available to you in that situation. So for example, maybe there's been an emergency and your friend hasn't been able to let you know that they're going to be late. Maybe there is a misunderstanding between the two of you about the day or the time that you were actually going to have dinner. Maybe you wrote it down wrong. There's a thought. Maybe something else, even better, is supposed to happen right now, and your friend's lateness opens up the possibility for something even better to come in. But those possibilities are challenging to see when our perspective is our tunnel vision, a 5 to 10 degree point of view. rather than this 360-degree global awareness when we're leaving room for a wider range of possibilities and more meanings than the few that we're coming up with. So the thing about that is that I would be willing to bet that every one of us here today has had at least one experience in your life that at the time you were going through it, you thought or felt that this is the worst thing that could happen. And all you could see or feel while it was going on was, will I ever move through this? Will it ever get any better than this? But at some point, and it may not be the next day or the next week, it may not even be the next month, but at some point, you realized and learned things about yourself or things about life itself that you may not have learned otherwise without that experience. So what happens is that we find out that events in our lives can be seen through many different points of view and through many different perspectives. But we shut off those possibilities with all of our pushing against things that we don't want and trying to pull towards us the things that we think should be happening. Trying to push away what we don't like and pulling to us only the things that only fit our should statements. So when I got into this teaching some time ago, I guess it's around 20 years ago now, I heard a speaker one time say something that I have never forgotten about this particular topic. And what she said was this: we say we believe that God is in everything, in everyone, in every circumstance, and is present everywhere. We say we believe there is nowhere God is not present fully. But when we usually say that is when everything is going the way we think it should be going. When the opposite of what we think should be happens, then we start to question, God is everywhere, God is in everything. And she ended by saying, how will we know that God is everywhere and in everything unless we open up and let it in to the experiences that we don't like and the things that we don't agree with? So that's when we begin the practice of giving up the pushing and the pulling life according to our notions of how it should be. But what a huge practice that is for every one of us. And I mean everyone. That is a huge practice. And we have to just keep practicing and practicing and practicing to elevate the scope of that 360-degree global awareness in order to see those wide range of possibilities that might be wanting to take place in our life. So human nature is really interesting to me. We seem to like getting caught up in things. We get caught up in our problems and our challenges. We get caught up in all of the questions that we have and trying to figure it all out. And get caught up in coming up with all the answers to why things happen the way they do and why people do what they do. But a really great practice, which again takes a lot of practice, is to interrupt your busyness at regular intervals during the day. Change locations, get up from the computer, move away from the TV. Physically remove yourself from situations that have you caught up and closed off and shut down. Those things that might feel like, if I do that, then all that means is I'm evading and avoiding responsibility if I practice that. But actually doing that is a way to create an opening for more expansive thinking and to create more room for a wider perspective about what's really happening. And sometimes what happens is that we see that there are things that we really can't do anything about when we move away from it for a while, and that there isn't really anything that's ours to do about it to begin with. And then when we realize that, then we know we can refocus on things that we can do something about. So I don't know about you, but I have found that it is a great relief and a big weight off of my shoulders to realize that I don't have to do it all, that I don't have to figure it all out, I don't have to know the answers to everything, and I don't have to fix everything. In other words, if we go back to that parable about the wave, we can realize that no single wave is the entire ocean. No single event. There is no person, no one person, and no one relationship, or not one single circumstance that constitutes the totality of our lives. And when we understand that, then we can practice doing whatever every surfer knows and what they practice. Because they know that they can't do a thing about the fact that there will always be a wave. But they can choose which wave they're going to jump on and ride or not. So it's just a lot more challenging to make that conscious choice about which wave to ride and which one to let pass when we think we have to jump on and ride all of them and control all of them and figure them all out and understand everything, rather than resting into openness and just witness them as they happen. So in spite of the fact that commandments have possibly been used in unhealthy ways in our past, there is one of the 10 Commandments that is a wise practice if we see it with a broader perspective than just a rule that's being imposed upon us. And we've probably all heard it, but the commandment is, remember the Sabbath. I like the Zen meaning of that a whole lot better than the meaning I was raised with. The Zen philosophy would say that Sabbath is a temporary withdrawal from limited worldly activity in order to reconnect with the limitless that some call God. And they go on to say that with regular practice, we can gradually learn to be in a state of utter rest 7 days a week, 60 seconds a minute, and just silently witness everything that's going on around us without getting sucked into the drama and the judgment about it. And remember that we can't do anything about the fact that there are just going to be these waves in our life. The practice is beneficial because then we learn to rest in the openness that in any situation we can consciously choose which waves we want to ride and which ones we want to let pass. So our affirmation this morning, which is in your chair and is going to be on the wall, speaks to this ability and this practice of openness and realizing that no event is the totality of our life, and that we can have this 360-degree perspective of what's going on rather than being trapped in tunnel vision. So let's say this together, and then we will have a prayer. Wherever I am, big place to rest in openness. Thank you. So I just invite you to close your eyes and go inside for prayer. And to remember that there is a presence within each and every one of us that has this 360-degree awareness. That it's not confused, that it's not in doubt, But the beauty is that that presence lives within us. And that we have the ability, to the extent of our determination and commitment to it, to raise the periscope and take a 360-degree view, rather than being trapped in a 5 to 10 degree tunnel vision experience, where we only see one thing happening or make one meaning out of what's happening. The power to create is in each and every one of us. To create a new idea or a new meaning out of every experience that we're going through. And it doesn't mean that we ignore what's happening or pretend that it's not there. It doesn't mean that we deny our feelings and emotions and just bury our head in the sand and pretend. All it means is that we open our hearts and our minds to something more. What is a larger view that I can see this through? What if I take off the blinders that have me seeing through a limited point of view? What would be possible if I stopped seeing not enough, or this should not be, and began to see that I'm surrounded by more than enough? That more than enough is within me. And so the double-edged sword is that we are always at the point of making a choice about that. That the one that created us loved us so much that it turned us loose and gave us the freedom to choose. And so we breathe in deeply to that opportunity, that choice is always ours. We get to choose how we see it, the lens that we view life through or someone else through, or the way we view ourselves. We are so powerfully creative. So powerfully creative that we create every meaning that we make, every interpretation that we want to give to everything that happens is within the power of our choice. And every one of our choices matter. And so we take advantage of this incredible opportunity and freedom that we've been given to be loved that much by the Creator of the universe that it set us free to determine what we were going to think, how we were going to react, to treat ourselves or to treat someone else. Whether we want to jump on that wave and ride it for all it's worth, or if we just want to watch it pass and say, this does not define me. I am not going to give this event power over me. I will take more from it than it takes from me. But that's the choice that we have. And we are so equipped already to make that choice. The potential is already there within each and every one of us. We have everything that we need inside of us and support in this spiritual community to help us get there. And for this, we give great thanks, knowing that we are loved in an indescribable way, just the way we are, just how we are. And together we say, and so it is.